So, Phil, what's your background and why are you talking to the Basis project? And welcome to, I don't know what number this is. It could be Basis 141, maybe Basis 142. But there's some pretty serious things going on, so introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Phil. I'm a concerned member of the public, uh, and I guess we'll get into why I am and what concerns me, and I guess do other people share these concerns?
Well, what's your basic background? I mean, do you have a technical side or experience in certain things? If you could let us know. So, in other words, what gives you a qualification to make any comments about what we're going to talk about?
Sure. Well, in my day job, I'm a software engineer. I know a lot about technology, and I definitely know a lot about how it's being used to influence or manipulate and control our behavior. I've worked in various organizations, basically looking at those things. But I guess what qualifies me to be speaking to you today is I've had experiences with, for lack of a better term, aliens.
Oh, the old
Um,
alien thing.
sorry.
The old alien thing.
Yeah, yeah. I can't stress how important of an experience that was for me in my own development. And I'm led to believe that there is a linear journey, and I'm not special. Anyone can go on that journey of development, and I believe that anyone and everyone has the ability to stand face to face with these beings and learn from them. But it's a lot of hard work. It it takes a lot out of you, um, and most people are therefore put off from even trying to head down that route. Um, and if people don't want to head down that route, that's fine. But I do believe that there is a lot of information that needs to be communicated to people that don't want to go down that route. Um,
Well,
a
this
lot
is
of
the
the
primary purpose of talks like this. So take it
exactly,
away.
which is the reason for me talking to you today. Not really one to put my face out there. I don't really like it. Um, I'm certainly not interested in any notoriety. Um, and I actually wish there was somebody else doing this. Somebody else who had experiences like me stepping forward and taking the helm. And over the
Well, if there
last
is
couple of months,
anybody else who is interested or can, they're welcome to contact me, and we'll do that. But we're here now, so you know what you want to get across. So let's do it.
yeah, sure. Well, I think everyone's frustrated in the world at the moment. Everyone's was angry, um, and I think one of the first things you do on this spiritual journey is you have the realization, and then you become angry about the world that you live in, almost. Um, and I think that we see this come in waves. We see new people every so often, periodically, who just say, "No, I've had enough." And it's always a different straw that breaks the camel's back in these waves. And when these waves come along, um, they set people off on a new journey. I mean, I've met people all throughout these waves at different points, and you can speak to them today, and they've progressed tremendously, um, in various different ways. And I think that after you're angry, you become frustrated to the point where you think, well, I'm just gonna, what can I do? What change can I make? I'm just gonna focus on myself and how do I am better in myself. Um, and then people do that for a few years, and then after that point, a new wave will come along. There'll be a new global outrage. It wasn't 2008 with the whole mortgage crisis. Um, it will be something else, and there'll be the next thing and the next thing. Um, and I find that people get to a certain point before whatever reason they decide to turn away. Most people get as far as conspiracies. People get even further than that, where they begin to love people around them, just for being human, no other reason. And then that obviously leads into a what I guess we'd call a spiritual awakening, but it's all the same really. That straw that broke the camel's back was what started the sort of awakening. And the reason I'm describing this is because I think there's a lot of people that are going through these notions at the moment. And it gets hard, it gets tough, but that's fine. You just keep going. And I would say that the only way, I hate to quote people like Jordan Peterson, but I don't even think he's the original quoter. The only way out is through. So anyone that's like having a hard time, feeling isolated, alone, alienated for whatever reason, like don't. There's a lot of people all across the globe. I would estimate into the tune of hundreds of millions now, who are incredibly frustrated with our society, and they might think to themselves, well, why is nothing changing? Well, it has to reach a critical mass globally. We're being subject to global control. So in order to have any chance at overcoming that, it needs to be a global effort. And we've been divided into nations, languages, ideologies. Like we eat hamburgers in the West, but yeah, in India they worship cows. We've got all of these what I would call bilateral antagonist points, which keep us divided with one another. And I would just stress that it's important to love people just for being human. That's it. The world's terrible. It's in a terrible state. It's in a lot of pain, and the only way we'll truly beat this divide and conquer is if we unify each other with each other. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about the extraterrestrials or the aliens or interdimensionals, or there's so many names for them, the jinn, whatever, it's not about the experience per se, or the experiences, but it's about the things that I learned from the experiences.
Well,
Um,
this is what we want to hear. We want to hear how that kind of thing.
yeah, it's cool. Just thought a little bit of context might be needed.
Absolutely.
So for me, it when I first caught wind that you could potentially have one of these experiences, it was about 4 years from first learning that you can have an experience like this, meeting someone who had, and then actually having that experience myself. 4 years, incredible. Um, it's incredible to think that if we all work hard enough on ourselves in whatever capacity, that we can be doing the impossible. Um, and I got to learn a lot of things. It's not an easy process, and the process you get to learn a lot along the way. And along the way, I got to learn about how these beings, people, they're humanoid in nature. I got to learn about their society, for lack of a better term, how they live. What are some of the philosophies that they live by? You know, what are some of the differences between us and them? And the overarching difference between us and them is that they believe they're all one. They believe they are experiencing themselves subjectively. And I know we've heard this in the form of Bill Hicks, comical genius, but it's true. That is the fundamental difference. There is no boundaries between them as individuals. They can witness an experience of an individual as if they were experiencing it themselves. And because they believe wholeheartedly, or they know wholeheartedly, that that is the fundamental part of their existence, they have a lifestyle which then accommodates that. They believe they're all one. They learn from their children. because they're the freshest eyes in the world. They're not caught up in their problems. They can provide solutions. They'll do anything for you. At least the good ones will. They love you like you've never really truly experienced it before. They'll move heaven and earth just to see you. And they're really concerned about us. For the longest time, they haven't been able to get involved. Um, but we're kind of at a point now where they are getting involved. You probably won't see their endeavors. You know, their understanding of time and space is so profound, so profound. And they really are running rings around our intelligence. You know, you could look left one moment and one could walk by in that very moment, and then you look back and they're gone. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. They're incredibly powerful, um, but they are really concerned about us as a whole. And they're very confused about why we do the things that we do as well. Um, and some of the other things that they live by is that they create their reality. If you know, some of the things these beings can do is they can teleport. They can literally biolocate from a point in space and time and be somewhere entirely different. They can read your thoughts. That's how they have conversations. They see your thoughts exactly how you're having them in this moment. And they have another ability, which is to literally just to change matter, whether that be moving it through the air or changing its fundamental shape or its physiological structure. The reason why they're not just showing up in motherships is because that'll terrify everyone. It will cause a mass panic, and that's not really what they're interested in doing. They want us to evolve into what I can only describe as a homodimensional being, which gives us the ability to basically teleport, read people's thoughts, and fundamentally change matter with what would appear to be our minds or our foundation of our being. And that is a fundamental part of their biology. They see anything that happens before their eyes as an illusion. They perceive reality very different to we do. They see it as a dodecahedron, almost like reality tunnels, which is what allows them to leave and come here. We're not living in a physical world, which means they don't teleport from one place to another. They say that they teleport using life. So they teleport into the person they want to speak to and then project themselves into the reality that way. And what's the point? What's the point of saying all this? Well, I would imagine it's like a lion and a human having an interaction with each other. It's very dangerous for both parties involved, and it can go horribly wrong. And I would say that any person that interacts with them, it's a similar situation. It's like a human interacting with a lion. It's very dangerous for both parties. The reason for the experiences is not to have a chin wag and a cup of tea. It's to basically reassure you that everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever questioned, everything has not sat right with you throughout your entire life is 100% correct. And everyone should be listening to their intuition on that, because their intuition is right. And I know people have had micro vindications along their journey about various different things, but
Could you
having an
explain that?
impossible,
Could you explain that a little bit better?
yeah, of course. So this experience for me was a massive vindication. Um, I didn't need to be vindicated in public. It was just for myself. Um, because if this impossible experience could happen, then it, without getting too deep into it, it must have meant that everything that led me there was correct. So when I talk about micro vindications, you know, like the government might admit something. They might come out and say, "Oh yeah, actually, those pesky conspiracy theorists were right." But what they do is they leave it for months and months and months before they disclose that information. So these micro vindications for everyone on an individual level, um, for me, standing face to face with aliens was a massive vindication for me. Uh, in It allowed me to know that everything that led me there was correct. My intuition was right. And if anything, I'm just saying, if you're not prepared to have an experience like that, where you're stood face to face with them, where you get such a massive reassurance, then what I would say to people is that their intuition is right. So if they suspect something is untoward, deceptive, then yeah, I would say that they are correct. But what I am mindful of is that we have adversaries in this reality, people that want to distort the message, that want to continue to divide and conquer the people of this great world. Um, and they do it through various different means. Generally, if you're very effective at the information that you communicate, there are organizations and bodies that look to discredit you, as we've seen in various different high-profile cases, like Russell Brand, for example. I guess that's a pretty modern case of how they try and discredit you. Um, and there's a lot of games going on that look to confuse us. Um, I think politics won't solve any of our issues. It is a symptom of the problem.
Do you think that the political process would be bypassed based in that by these beings?
Yeah, I mean, I would break these beings down into ones that have your best interests at heart and ones that do not.
Okay, could you
The
go
ones,
into depth on that? On that,
yeah, sure. The ones that have your best interests at heart don't generally, no problem, no problem. So the ones that generally don't have your best interests at heart, let me rephrase that. The ones that do have your best interests at heart, they don't want to interfere with you. They they're not interested in controlling you. They're interested in freedom and philosophies like that. But I would say that these aliens that don't have your best interests at heart have literally created this world, the entire thing. Um, mm, they've created the physics protocols. They've created gravity, various things like that. That's very deep. Um, on the surface level, they've created things like governments, economy, all that sorts of thing. But what they do is they rely on human creation and then they conflate it. So it imprisons us. It's their MO. We tell them how we want to be controlled all the time. And that shows in our politics.
is that us giving our permissions away as such?
Yes,
They
yes,
trick
because
us to do that.
yes, they have manipulated us to do that. We are incredibly powerful. We are creating reality right now, and we're not even aware of it. We've been deceived. into what's called the human condition, and they are effectively getting us to create our own prisons
And dig our own graves.
and effectively then dig our own graves. And you can tell because what is a mortgage? Well, it's a mort gauge. It's gauging your mortality. How long do you have left? So there are various mechanisms all throughout society which are there to measure every individual. Um, and words are spellings at the end of the day, they're spells. There's a classic example of that. If anyone's familiar with Jordan Maxwell's work, late Jordan Maxwell,
Yeah, the late Jordan
um,
Maxwell.
I love Jordan Maxwell. He inspired me to come up with my own, or figure out my own sort of, or discover one of my own word mazes. I don't know what the term is. You know, he goes on about, you know, a ship coming into berth, birthing at the dock, and then when we come down our mother's birth canal, we are presented to the dock and all this sort of stuff. Well, there's another one. If we look at our microeconomy, it's an electronical schematic for a circuit board. And we look at these financial institutions, or we look at these financial centers in the world, and they're generally in cities, and from above they look like circuit boards. And if you look at a blueprint of what's called the microeconomy and the macroeconomy, it's so brilliant. It's got resistors, it's got mechanisms, it's got capacitor mechanisms in it, it's got semiconductors in it, all laid out there in blueprint.
Well, the term overheating the economy, for instance,
Exactly.
is
And
it's an analogy to electrical circuits.
exactly. And what flows through electrical circuitry?
The current electrons,
Currency.
currency. Yeah,
And where do we store currency? In bank vaults.
yeah.
Voltage. So why would you need different currencies? Well, because different currencies have got different values, purchasing power. They're different voltages. It's the trickery is all before it's right in front of our eyes.
Okay, well let's get back to how you got onto this experience, and when did and how this alien thing happened, or were the aliens, and what were those experiences that led to you finding this way.
Sure. I mean, as a child, I had a lot of experiences. Um, didn't think anything of it at the time, just assumed it was normal. And then you go through a process where you're conditioned by the world. School does a good job at that. And I started off by saying that everyone's got the potential capability of having these experiences. And I do believe that when we were younger, we were having these experiences to some extent. But then we get conditioned by the world, and then our perception of what's possible is altered.
What were these experiences?
What, the ones when I was younger?
Yes.
There was a few. There was one that comes to mind. I was quite happily sat in my bedroom as a kid playing, and I get a sense that someone stood behind me. So I look back, and there's 4 people stood behind me in my room. And I'm just observing what they're saying, but that's the thing, they're not saying anything. I'm just hearing voices. It's not even hearing voices, it's the telepathy at work. So that's what I was picking up on. And there appeared to be 2 younger beings and 2 older beings. And the 2 younger ones were sort of saying, "Can we stay and watch this one?" And the 2 older ones said, "No, it's going to be a little while, a long time before this one gets exciting." So with that, it just disappeared into thin air. And I felt like I was a zoo attraction. And after seeing their levels of intelligence, it wouldn't surprise me. That was another experience. They teach me things
What were
about.
these beings? Do you have any idea what they were? What did they look like?
Yeah, they were humanoid in nature, arms, legs, two arms, that sort of thing. They had facial features and things just like we do, but they look very different to us. They got no wrinkles, and they've got a glass-like appearance around them, like a shiny sort of appearance. Um, when they show themselves, they show up in various different extremes. You can see them just sort of silhouettes with a multicolored outline, so to speak, and you can see right through them sometimes. But it's because of what's going on. It's your perception that blocks them out from the world. It's our perception that is not able to handle it. It would cause such a revision in our worldview that it would cause people to most people to go insane if they're not ready for an experience like that. And there was other experiences. They taught me very sophisticated things about quantum mechanics, which are only just being experimented today. There was one time they told me to go and look into a mirror that was outside my bedroom, and they said, is that a mirror? I said, yeah. They said, well, is it, or is it a portal? And there's just somebody stopping you from walking through. I said, well, that seems crazy to me. Um, and then they told me that everything was a reflection and that nothing existed. And then, as of about 6 months ago, CERN are doing experiments with protons and mirrors, and they're shooting protons at quantum mirrors, basically. And the reason for doing that is they suspect that mirrors are actually gateways into these infinite dimensions that exist and that are all around us. There's a lecture from the Royal Institute of Science, I think, where a CERN scientist was up on the stage giving a demonstration. Just to lay the premise out, he says, what I'm going to do is I've got a phone in my pocket, and I'm just going to send a signal back to CERN. So he's instantly piqued my interest. I said, Geezer's got a connection on his phone to CERN. What's he saying? He says, I'm going to shoot a photon at this mirror, and what it's going to do is it's going to tell me which way I need to jump so it lines up with my reflection in the mirror. Now, I'm not stood in front of the mirror, but somewhere in that alternate universe exists me stood here in front of you, away from that mirror in Geneva, Switzerland. But I'm still stood here in front of you, and I can still move left and right. So I'm going to send a signal back to CERN. It's going to shoot a photon at a mirror, and this experiment is going to tell me which way the alternate me jumped, because the way mirrors work, it's got to be opposite. It's got to be like opposed to what you do. It's the opposite action. So the results have come back on his phone. He goes, right, my reflection jumped left, so I'm going to jump right, and he jumped right. And I know that seems crazy, but this is what CERN are currently experimenting with right now. Um, these infinite dimensions. And why do I bring this up? Well, because we have access to all of those dimensions, but we're being prevented from being able to access them. We've got loads and loads and loads and loads of bodies that we can occupy. I've done it. Some people probably have as well. There are dreams that people have where they experience sleep paralysis and they can't move their body, and they seem to be in control of another body in a completely identical scenario, in their house, in their bedroom, indistinguishable from this world to a large extent. So these extra temporal dimensions do exist. I would say, in my experience. So those were some of the experiences I had when I was younger, and then it led into my first experience as an adult in 2012, where I
Could you
removed all the
explain
plausible
the
doubt.
experiences in greater detail? This is fascinating.
Yes, the one as an adult.
Yeah, each one.
There's a lot, um, and this 4 year process that I went on from about 2008 to 2012, there was a lot that happened during that time. Saw UFOs, saw crop circles, all those kinds of things, as you
What
do.
were the UFOs like? Which type of crop circle? I mean, some of them have got different experiences and things.
Sure. Um, so summer solstice one year, I went to down to the Avebury stone circles because it's great. There's bongo drums, there's fire, there's some pretty cool people, and the landscape's very beautiful to be experiencing the longest day of the year. And not to mention the crop circles that are world renowned. Every year, without fail, crop circles appear in Avebury, and it was the 21st of June, and it was the longest day. We were just up as late at 2 in the morning before we decided to sort of hit the hay. And of course, we were camping, so we were naturally up early, um, 6, 7. So we slept for about 5 hours. But during this time was a massive crop circle formed um, in just the next field. And we had a vantage point because we were up on the hill, and there's a hill adjacent to Silbury Hill that we camped on. And it was shocking because prior, I mean, we don't drink. Like I don't, we don't like alcohol, or drugs or anything like that. But it's just I couldn't believe how quickly it formed. And we were up late, and we had a great vantage point. We didn't see any lights. We didn't see people with sticks and boards. And quite frankly, the level of intricacy, um, it was quite incredible uh, for someone to have done that at night. Um,
Could you identify the formation?
yeah, I think there's pictures of it online. I have got one, but I'll have to find it. It was two yin yangs, so in the formation of a figure eight, which was, as we know, the infinity logo. And
Was
I
that
later,
in 2008?
I think it might have been 2010. I'll have to double check.
Right.
Um, you can if definitely, what these crop circles are like. They get photos from the sky. They'll be there. Um, and the
Yeah,
normal
there's
strange
a great
things happen.
website for that called Crop Circle Connector. They do a good bunch of guys there. Very good back catalogue on all that.
Yeah, you see the planes up in the sky, getting the snaps of them. And if you're ever down there in Avebury yourself, you can head down to some of the local shops, and they'll tell you where the latest ones are. They'll point you in the right
Yeah, the
direction.
Crop Circle Exhibition Centre at Honey Street, wonderful place, run by
Mm,
uh, Monique.
lovely ice cream next door as well,
Yeah.
for a hot day walking around the stones. Um, yeah, so I've seen a tremendous amount of UFOs do crazy things.
Explain the
Um,
UFOs you've seen.
I can't count them anymore. Like
Well,
you've
just
got.
give us half a dozen.
Um,
Of what sort of circumstances were there?
I've had all different types of circumstances. I've had people spot them, and then say, "Look up there," people that would never have thought they would ever seen a UFO or even wanted to, for that matter. So I look up and I say, right, let's try and debunk it. Is it a plane? Does it have a beacon on it with the lights? No, 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 no. That one, I think, was actually the stealth program, the bomber, but because it was this massive triangle, people really had no reference point for what it was. So there are
Where was this?
sightings. That was in my old back garden in a town called Bicester, in
Where's that
Oxfordshire.
part? Which part of the country?
That's in Oxfordshire, about a 20-minute drive from the Oxford city centre itself. Just in the town centre. So there was a lot of light pollution around. It was low. There was no obvious signs of noise. There was no, flashing beacon that's required by regulation. So I suspected it was probably a covert sort of project, one of these
Could you
technology
get any
projects.
details on this particular triangular object?
No, it was at night, so I wasn't able to make out any of the features other than the three constant red lights on each tip. That's how we sort of knew it was a triangle, and you could make out a mass in the middle. But I would say that that's probably not like alien in origin. I would suspect that's probably come from our military-industrial complex.
Yeah. Ultimately,
Um,
why? What makes you make that decision?
that has come from the military-industrial complex,
Yeah.
because I've seen their crafts, and it's not theirs. Their crafts are old. That they look very old, and
Now, whose craft? What type?
the ETs themselves, or the aliens themselves, I guess for lack of a better term, they call themselves the Palladians, the Pleiades. That whole group, the ones that hang out in the blue jumpsuits, for lack of a better way of describing them.
Yeah.
Um, and their crafts are very old looking, and they're alive as well.
Why do they look old? Explain that. How do you know that?
Um, I guess why I'm saying they look old is because I'm a software engineer and I've got to implement designs all day long. I'm speaking to designers, and you you begin to pick up on different designs throughout the ages. Different trends were fashionable, designs were fashionable. In the 80s, everyone was rocking broad shoulders and perms. And it just gave me the impression it was it almost felt like the 1920s, but that it probably wasn't
Well,
built
it's
then.
always worthwhile clinging to your, what you feel first.
And that was the reason I suspect it looked like something that was made in the 1920s, but at the same time, I know it wasn't. It was just from that. It was like there was that style of design. Um, so
What makes it look old? I mean, were you up close enough? Could you see it? Was it covered in dust or burn marks from too many, Stargate jumps or what? What makes it look old?
sure. No, there's no burn marks. It's pretty. They're in pretty pristine condition. Um, I was looking at some of the things these crafts can do, and everything I sort of have been told about them. It it made me feel like they were at least older than me, and that was the thought I had at the time. And I'd been told that these things are actually alive. They're alive like you and I, and you interface with them to move
Now, who
them.
told you that? Who told you that they were alive?
The deities, the aliens, they told me a lot of things that you know I can't prove, and then all I'm doing is putting my neck out on the chopping block and just telling you the things that I was told.
Well, tell
Um,
us what they said.
well, they don't really say much, and they communicate with telepathy, which is effectively, for lack of a better concept, in the form of brainwaves, but that's not even what's going on. So you communicate large amounts of information over a very short period of time. Um, I'll tell you about another craft experience that I had. And I do this a lot with people. Is anyone that wants to go out and see them, I take them out. I take them out, and in order for them to sort of just be able to show up, um, everyone needs to be settled. It can't be restless, complaining about something. And once people are settled, in that exact moment, they show up, like right in front of everyone. And a little practice I try and do is when one goes over, people are obviously flabbergasted. And the first thing they want to do is they want to try and debunk it. So I take them through the notions of that. I say, can you hear an airplane noise? Can you, this, that, the other? No, no, no. People are really excited at what they're seeing. Another one comes over, gets a bit lower. Another one comes over, gets a bit lower. People love what they're seeing at this point. And then there's almost like a next step for that experience where it's like, what do you want them to do next? Do you want them to land? Do you want them to like power up real bright? What do you want? Most people won't entertain the landing. The people that have entertained the landing in the past they've ended up scared. Once they realize they're going to land, they've got no reference point for what's going to happen next. So they become scared and they begin to take off again and fly away. Or the people that say they want them to shine up real bright, for example, in that exact moment where they say, yeah, I want them to shine up real bright, when they say shine, they're shining up in that exact moment. So there is a connection.